Hello, hello. Can I request you all to please take your seats? Hello, hello. Great. Do you need to just pull the door? Sorry. Let him, please just mind the door. Okay, good evening everybody, and thank you so much for sort of making it today in spite of the bad weather. Obviously my warm welcome to each and everyone out here, including the panel members, on the 7th episode of Tech Tuesdays. For some of you who are attending this event for the very, very first time, Tech Tuesdays UK stemmed from the very idea of building a community that ideates, nurtures, and then fosters a free-flow discussion of disruptive technologies, which have the potential to impact a billion lives. As you know, that Tech Tuesdays UK is a monthly event which taking place on the first Tuesday of every month, where we sort of spend an hour and a half having discussion around technology. The most unique thing about Tech Tuesdays UK, for some of you who are attending this for the first time, you realize that this is a free-flow conversation where we do not have any given script or any kind of given pre-decided questions. Moving on, obviously this event would not have happened without the active support and gracious support of our partner, KNL Gets. Given that we sort of strive on spreading the good word model, I would request each one of you sort of tweet about us, talk about us on LinkedIn and Twitter as well. Our Twitter handle, as you can see, is Tech Tuesdays UK. And on LinkedIn, please use the hashtag #TechTuesdaysUK. I may also add out here that starting from yesterday, we've also gone live on YouTube. So in the event, if you want to watch the old episodes or the previous episode of Tech Tuesdays, log into YouTube, and you can also see the coming one. Last but not the least, we've also created a video bite station, which is part of our tradition, wherein we will invite some of you to share your thoughts on Tech Tuesdays. Your comments obviously are highly appreciated, and for sure, they're going to be sort of broadcast across all our digital channels. So please hang around at the time of networking and drinks. Don't run away. Before I sort of invite the panel members today, I would like to make a special note out here that we got a bunch of students from UCL, and we also have a bunch of students from QE Barnet. Shubh, who is the volunteer out here, have kind of managed to get an institution or his school organized and send close to about 7-8 odd students from QE Barnet. So thanks to you, Shubh. With regards to today's event, as I just mentioned, every episode of Tech Tuesdays UK is based on a particular technology theme. And the theme for this evening is universities and innovation. And to drive the discussion today, we have an amazing panel with us. Let me take the pleasure of inviting them and request them to take their seats. Can I have a round of applause, please? I have with me Ben Baptist from Indian University. Please take a seat. Thank you. I have Daniel Shaw from University of Edinburgh. Ben. And I have Ken Valady, who is an author, and probably Ken will talk a lot more about his book and everything. Please take your seat. I must also mention that we were supposed to have the fourth panel members, Dr. Guy Hembury from University of Portsmouth. Unfortunately, while he's down with COVID, and I thank you for this, he's agreed to join over Zoom, so he may be virtually there with us. Guy, if you're around, thanks a lot for this. Great. So I now leave the forum in the able hands of the panel members, and I take my seat back there. All the best. Thank you.
Superb. Well, thank you everyone for coming along. I thought first of all we could do an introduction. And I might kick off myself. I'll start first. So my name's Ken Valady. I'm introduced as an author, but that's not my day job. I run a business where we sit between corporates and startups. So I work with the corporate world on one side who are looking to solve a problem, and I go searching globally for startups that can help them with said problem. The author part, and this is my only plug for the book, is I just completed a book called The Startup Lexicon, which is 200 plus words and phrases that startups and investors use, geared more towards universities or anyone who wants to work with startups, or dare I say, anyone who wants to start a business. It's important you know the language you're going to get involved in. So that's the plug. for the book gone, it's here. If anyone wants to buy it on Amazon, etc., and that's the end of the book club. So that's me, and one of the reasons I'm on the panel is I go to quite a few universities and talk about what I see in startups, what attributes they have, good ones, and also what language, and what's the language if you are going to work with the startup world, and obviously through that I deal with universities and how they want to connect with the corporate world and startup world. Okay. Daniel.
Hi there, my name is Daniel Shore. I'm with the University of Edinburgh, not as an academic, but in a somewhat similar vein to Ken. I'm a kind of conduit or liaison, so working in partnerships between industry, corporates, and the university. I've been, for the last few months, leading a particular Center of Investing Innovation, which is a partnership with Aberdeen, but more generally, I've been building and supporting a wide variety of partnerships. My background is financial services, hence the Aberdeen piece, but partnerships is what I'm all about.
Good afternoon, my name is Ben Boertes, not Boats as commonly known. I wear two hats, so I'm part of Brunel Business School, where I'm the director for Brunel Hive, where we specifically do a lot of community outreach. We focus on impact specifically through technology, through AI, through any of those means that is relevant to our audience. I'm also part of an impact venture capital firm in South Africa, where I've been part of that for the last 10 years. My background is varied. I've worked for some large companies, Accenture for instance, as some of you might know. I've started a few companies of my own, some of them failed, 2 of them got acquired. And so interesting in this conversation tonight that we're having a bit of a pre-meet conversation, and the word conversation came up because, from an educational perspective, and if you think about innovation comes from diversity, innovation comes from communication, innovation comes from many voices rather than just one voice. And I think from an education perspective, we are evolving, away from one person talking and others pretending to listen for an hour and a half or 2 hours, towards more of a conversation. And I'm hoping that we're going to have some of that conversation this evening. So thank you for having us.
And I'm non-academic in terms of day job, but I'm always intrigued. How are universities now, I suppose 2 parts, dealing with innovation and portraying that and connecting that to the outside world? Because my view when I was at university was university was almost like a bubble, the campus bubble, and you never really saw the corporate world or the outside world. But now it's important that universities do reach out. They can't just be their own entities. So I suppose from a Brunel Edinburgh point of view, what's the main? Is there a program you can emphasise to show that these connections are now being made and things have moved on from, dare I say, my day in university?
Yes, certainly. I think we talk a lot about knowledge transfer. And knowledge transfer is probably a bit of a complex word for communicating to the audiences that we are hoping to be listening. And so those audiences could be students, they could be startups, they could be funders, they could be government organizations, there could be large corporates who are taking some of our students for internships as an example. And so depending on who the audience is, the knowledge transfer piece takes a different format. So some of it could be blogging or vlogging in today's term, some of it could be research papers, some of it could be events where we invite alumni to, or industry experts to, or government funders to. So depending on the audience who we're communicating to, the transfer piece looks different. I'm sure it's probably similar with you.
Yeah, and I can't say for the hundreds of years that the university has been around charting that entire journey, but it's certainly been something that's happened over the past number of years that, part of it's just economic. So the research council monies have become very competitive, and the universities still are all aspiring to produce world-changing research and impact, and one of the key ways to do that is with industry partners. And so even just in the past 7 years at the University of Edinburgh, we've gone from around 30 startups that we've been creating a year to over 100. So that's one major thing, and that's why we've now been amongst the top of the Russell Group in terms of student startups. And we've also been increasing our industrial translational projects. So we went from around 10 million in joint research projects to over 80 million in recent years. And that has all kinds of interesting economic impacts. So in recent years, we've been doing over £7 billion worth of economic impact for the UK economy. So it's really important to see the role that we play and how it's not only, yes, a bubble, but very important to be integrated for multiple reasons. Yeah.
The thing I've seen, if anyone's heard of a Team Academy degree, has anyone heard of the Team Academy degree? It's from Finland, and there's a handful of universities in the UK doing it. I think it's a fascinating idea of making entrepreneurs ready for the outside world. So it's from Finland, and you actually, if I got it right, you do a 3-year degree. I think Aston is one of the universities doing it. But in that course, you learn modules, so you learn the basic business modules, but throughout the course, you start your own business. So actually, through the course, you are running a business. So you're doing the real experience in running a business, as well as learning the principles and the knowledge and the academic side as well, which I think is really unique. It's quite new. And I'm up at Aston now and then to talk about the book, and I'm fascinated by people in front of me who actually got businesses started.
Yeah.
So rather than actually, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but learning first and then maybe starting a business afterwards, part of the course, the assessment is how you do starting a business from scratch. And some of these people will start, flounder, start again, fall out with their founders, all the stuff that you go through in the real world, but they're doing it at the university. So I think, from my own point of view, that's a really step forward for people who want to maybe start their own business and rather go down the undergraduate route of business or entrepreneurship and all the different courses, great courses out there, or this Team Academy seems quite an interesting way of giving you that tangible experience as well as the knowledge, the academic experience as well.
Yes, I think at Brunel, for instance, we do have an incubator where some of the students can bring their ideas to. I'm not sure if all students are always ready to get into that space where they're starting something meaningful. I think once you are in the startup space, there's a lot of glorification around starting a business, and obviously we see a lot of the big success stories and the massive evaluations of companies who's gone to an IPO, and the founders are billionaires, but for each one of those there's probably 100 failures. And I think from a student's perspective, I mean, some of the students, for instance, we've spoken about or spoken with tonight, have a high level of confidence, and I think it's important that you build on that confidence early on. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't support startups at university level, and obviously once again there are the opportunities to do that, but I think the framework for that needs to be perhaps mixed in a way where some of those students maybe try something that they're not really going to build on, while others perhaps do have the commitment to actually build something and take it forward. And so for those who are serious about starting a company, we do provide that support, and there's a bit of funding involved. And then once they get to the point where they can raise a seed round, we will then engage with investors to come and listen to pitches, for instance. I'm not entirely sure if I'm convinced by that model. I think education itself perhaps needs to evolve a little bit further to provide people with the right level of thinking around startups, but I think it's a good idea to maybe trial with a certain part of the university.
Yeah. Maybe it's that conversation that you were saying earlier that you could be doing a certain course at university and your plan is to go and work for someone at the end of it, but you've got this itch that you might want to think about running a business, but you don't quite know. And it's almost like a safe zone, I suppose, to go to an incubator on campus and say, I've got this idea, it'd be good fleshing out with someone, but it's not my main thrust at the moment. I want to get my degree and maybe look at the corporate world afterwards. But you never had that when I was, all those years ago when I was at university. It was like, if you're going to start your own business, that was something that you kind of fell upon you either at the start or when you finished, but you never had an opportunity to develop that idea. Even if it led to nothing, you never had that place to go to ask someone what they thought. So I think from a personal perspective, I think it's really good that universities are giving you an option to discuss entrepreneurial feelings, for want of a better term, that you may have, rather than just leaving it or parking it or thinking it's not right for you. Because it may be that you go to one of those and you realise that for whatever reason that idea isn't quite right yet, or it wasn't what you thought it was, or maybe you're not quite ready to start a business. But it's best to have those discussions while you're at college, maybe, than going out to the big wide world and it not working.
I think college or university is a safe space to try things out, and I agree that is a good place for that to happen. Whether that reflects the reality of the world outside of university, I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah.
And so interestingly, some of the students, for instance, here this evening said, well, I want to start off my business one day, but first I want to go study and maybe first explore the different subjects, and then maybe from there I'll come up with an idea. And so I wouldn't, I'm a big advocate for there's no one right way to do things. There's probably many right ways for different people, and maybe offering that to some students. I think from our perspective, we're starting to integrate entrepreneurship into more degrees today. That's one way of doing it, to get people to start to think about the entrepreneurial avenue, not necessarily saying that is the right way for them. If I think about the people that I know, that there are some people who are clearly cut out to be entrepreneurs, and I don't want to get into the discussion about whether entrepreneurs are born or made. That's maybe a different one. And perhaps some who are already not cut out for the entrepreneurial world, and so I think people would need to have their choice in terms of the way that they develop their careers. Because we need people on both sides, right? You can't just have entrepreneurial types. You do need the corporate workers who can drive the big corporates, and maybe corporate entrepreneurship or intrapreneurship is a bit of a different field to starting up your own venture and building it from scratch. It would be interesting to hear some of the students' perspectives on this, whether they feel that, almost encouraging you to start something up at undergraduate or even postgraduate level, is that the way to go, or should we leave it up to you in terms of making your choice once you've studied and maybe experience the world a bit more, and then maybe after that come up with ideas that you want to develop further?
Hi, so I'm a student in Barnet, so not too far from here, and I think I took on board what you said about trying to encourage us at a younger age, but I do think that for someone of our age it can be quite daunting, the whole prospect of starting a business at 17, 18, 19, 20. A lot of people go through high school thinking that's what I want to do, this is my path, and then they go to university and they think everything changes, because obviously school is a bubble, university is a slightly bigger bubble, and the world outside is completely free. What I would say is I think events like this do bring a lot to people of our age, because I think there's a lack of awareness, even because a lot of people are told from a young age that I need to be a doctor, I need to be an engineer, I need to go into working for someone else. But if you're being told from a younger age that you too can start something, you can be the person who's in charge of yourself, I think that's appealing to young people. But I do think you do have to be realistic that not everyone's going to want to seek out those opportunities, and it shouldn't be forced on people necessarily. I think integrating into degrees is an idea, but not for all degrees, obviously. Like, there's certain degrees to which maybe the academic side is the better route. But I do think that just putting the opportunity in front of people, whether it's they're going to take it or not, is up for them to take. But I do think the idea of giving people the opportunity is it's a good starting point, because if people know something exists from a younger age, they're more inclined to take it as a possibility, not necessarily go into it, but of course the possibility being there is the important thing. Thanks.
Yeah, I quite like that. I mean, obviously we're talking about innovation also in addition to the whole idea of startups today. And I wonder if we had the opportunity to hear from each one of your colleagues who's here tonight, whether they will all have the same opinion or whether the opinions will be different. And that's where innovation comes from. It comes from different perspectives, right? And so I quite like the idea of not being forced to be a doctor or a lawyer or an accountant or whatever the case may be, as perhaps we had when I was your age, which was many moons ago. But having the options to choose, and maybe having the exposure to what entrepreneurship is all about, to help you to perhaps think about that at a later stage could be a good idea. But once again, maybe not for all. Maybe there are one or two people in the audience who's going to start up something and never look back and never have to work for somebody else again. I mean, that's also obviously an option.
Hi, so I'm also a student at the same school. In regards to,
Maybe just share your name and...
Sure. My name is...
Just on, yeah. Just push up.
My name is Yash. I'm a student in Queensland School as well. And in regards to what you said, and in regards to the degree form that you were talking about earlier, I think one thing that we should consider is there any benefit in being an entrepreneur for its sake, like to making a startup for a startup's sake? Because you have two types of people, I think, who make startups. One are people who have an idea and then they want to do a business, and the second are people who just do business because they want to have their own business and then the idea comes second.
Yeah.
So I think maybe that format of degree probably forces you to have an idea and start the business first and then make an idea later. Is that as efficient as it should be, or should we focus on taking people who have ideas, who could come from like very like a huge range of degrees? You could have a person doing a psychology degree with an idea about like data, and that type of person. Is it not better to pick that strand of people up instead of taking the business people and just helping them continue to develop their ideas?
Yeah, I might just mention that. To your point, it's and before there's no one size fits all, right? And so I think what I've been impressed with at the University of Edinburgh is how they have the opportunity for folks to engage, and then from across different disciplines with the incubator programs. It's a competitive thing, but they can also help you get paired up. So if your expertise and studies have been, say psychology, and I actually saw a kind of demo day where this was the case, kind of bringing to light what you're mentioning. She got paired up and came together with some data scientists, right? For which the University of Edinburgh is ranked #1 in UK research power. And so they were able to create a company together. And so I don't think, we need to say, oh, you need to have everything fully formed. And again, like, you've had companies that have succeeded, failed. I've had a company that had different paths. We've learned through those processes. And so, kind of to your point as well, there are multiple values that you get out of that experience, and doing it during a university, I think it's a good opportunity.
I forget the university, but there's at least a couple of universities I've spoken to who, in their incubator programs, say how people come to them looking to start a business that has nothing to do with their degree. I mean, that's the common thing. So people will do an accountancy degree or an engineering degree and think of starting a business in dry cleaning or something like that, nothing to do with their degree at all. And I think that's a really good thing, because people are opening their minds more. I do, and maybe it's an old-fashioned view, but I always say to people that when you're at university, barring kind of bad illness, things like that, you know where you're going to be for the next 3 or 4 years, and that doesn't always apply in life when you get into a corporate world. So you've got this kind of set, unless you want to drop out, you've got this set time, you know where you're going to be in a certain town, city, studying certain things. So your thread, your skeleton is your syllabus and your course. And I think if there's opportunities within the campus or within the university to actually play around a little bit and do a side hustle, because don't forget, starting a business now doesn't mean you want to start a business and make millions and have thousands of people. You can do something on your own and make money from that online with the technology that's out there. So it doesn't have to be, I'm going to have a massive empire kind of thing. So I do think you can do both. And I think that's what's great with the universities offering these places, and safe places sounds maybe it's not the right word, but places to go confidentially, say I've got an idea. Nothing to do with what I'm studying, nothing to do with anything someone's told me to do, but I've seen something someone spoke about the pub the other day, I think I could do something with it. And you could easily kind of get a company registered, get a website up and running and have a play with it. It doesn't work, stop it. You've got rid of that itch. I think that's and you may realise from that it's not for you. I think it's much better learning that while you're at university and you've got that stability of the course that hopefully you still love and want to do, than maybe taking that chance when you're out in the big wide world. I still think that's a really good opportunity for the universities. My criticism would be when you go to universities now and they talk about why you should go and join the university, you hear all the stuff about the #1 this and #5 this and everything. It's fantastic. But I'd like them to say things like, and we've also got the incubator here, and if people have got an idea, they might want to start themselves. It's not for everyone, but we've got that. I think that's the point of difference. Even though a lot of them have got it, I don't hear any of them talking about it. When I used to go with my daughters, go around to campuses, you say, what's that? Oh, that's our incubator. Well, that's amazing. Now, I'm in that world, so I'm interested by it, but I reckon actually sold more. Yes, it's not part of the syllabus, but that's still giving people opportunity to explore things while they're within the world of the university. So that's not criticism to you guys. I just think that's a real good selling point. Because how many times do you hear someone coming out with a degree saying, I don't know what I want to do. I've got this, I've studied so hard because I've got the 2-1 and whatever it may be, I don't know what to do. I think the university, giving them a chance to explore, find themselves, still get a qualification that's going to help them, is a real, not just getting a qualification, the other things that the campus and the experience and the knowledge can bring to help someone, sounds very grand, find themselves and be in a better place at the end to think, well, this is what I'm going to do with my degree. Start my business or for a corporate. So I think it's undersold sometimes.
Pratap Tambe, Tata Consultancy Services. I think we are taking a very narrow perspective about some relatively fresh students and out of college, and they're doing innovation. They are, in my opinion, they are not the fountainhead of innovation, because and nowadays universities have no monopoly on education. There is more education happening outside universities than inside universities. And secondly, students are no longer only these fresh students. Everyone has to continuously learn. So a lot of that innovation comes from the more mature students who come back to campus and so on. And most importantly, because most education is now not happening inside universities, but it's happening outside, the role of a university in a new economy is quite different, in my opinion. And the importance of the cross-breeding of ideas in a non-confrontational session where there are no NDAs of, if you have to engage with anyone in any intellectual conversation in a corporate setting, it is just not possible because you have to write umpteen NDAs and you are under so many restrictions. But it's a non-confrontational environment where there is intellectual cross-fertilization that can happen, like this forum itself. So there are a lot more such opportunities within a campus, and that's where basically the hotbed. And just focusing on students and entrepreneurship is probably looking at the very shallow end of the pool. Really, I am a executive in residence at Brunel University, and I am involved. There are so many other corporate and university collaborations of different kinds that do happen, and these EIR and executive in residence. There are various mechanisms through which innovation happens. Yeah. So let's not limit ourselves to only students and entrepreneurship.
And that's really.
Can I ask, what is executive residence? I didn't get. What does that mean?
Can you repeat that in the mic, sir?
You said the position that you hold at the university. What is it? Could you talk a little bit about it? That'd be fantastic.
So basically, it's an opportunity for people from corporates to work with universities on collaborative research projects of mutual interest. That's basically the idea. So some universities have this. Then there are professors of practice who basically do this process. So there are so many other dimensions to this. Let's not limit ourselves just to that.
Yeah, well, just to that point, I fully agree. The individual student and where they want to go doesn't cover innovation fully. I think it's an important part, but the next question in line with what you just said is, there's a lot more value coming from universities towards innovation than just the students that are going through the courses. There's the other side as well, which is all the research, the learning, the expertise, and how you connect that, dare I say, to the outside world. And I think that's my next question was going to be, is that a challenge? Because once you leave, if you take some of my clients, large corporates, I would imagine a lot of them will be completely unaware of what the opportunities are of working with the university. They understand universities, most people would have gone through one. But seeing it as a partner for the future for innovation may not be top of their list. It may not be the first point of call. So, is that a challenge that universities have to try and bring their expertise to the fore more and get corporate partners to make innovation together as a partnership? Is it a challenge to bring that awareness up so you're seen as a viable option to a large corporate?
I think there's many challenges involved. Certainly, I mean, this is only one. If we just start with the traditional way that universities work, then it's about somebody who's done a lot of research typically, who specialises in the subject, and he or she then have done research and they teach or educate or help students to learn around that. I think working with industry such as the executives in residence that the gentleman speaks about that we have at Brunel, for instance, where we're integrating industry into the classroom, and so the opportunity there is for students, let's say for instance somebody studying AI or data analytics or digital marketing or engineering, whatever the case may be, on every term to work with somebody from industry to understand how what they're studying in the class is related to industry, is a way both for the students to become more informed and also for organizations to understand, well, what are we talking about in the class these days? Because there's innovation opportunities on both sides of this. I think we're obviously talking about a microcosm of education, as mentioned, and there's a lot of education, postgraduate, if you like. There's a lot of executive education out there. Most universities that I'm aware of, probably in one form or another, do executive education. The UK government's got a few great funded programs at the moment, Help to Grow and Build Back Better, for instance, that we do, where we're working with either early stage businesses or growth stage businesses to help them to understand the sort of the latest thinking that's happening at university level, but also providing them with the opportunity to then come and speak to the students and share ideas with students. And at any stage where there's differences of opinion and differences of levels of experience, there's opportunities for different ideas and innovation. I think just coming back to the whole idea of being a student, if I remember very vaguely my first experience of being a student, it's probably being forced into a degree that I thought, well, this is something good to study because it sounds attractive and I'm probably going to get a good job and so forth. Excuse me. But as you start to experience life, you start to realize that your areas of interest are in other areas. And so what you've mentioned is that often at incubators at universities, for instance, somebody who's studying X wants to start a business in Y because they've started to read and they've started to meet other people and they've started to gain exposure of content online where there's obviously so much learning happening. And that's an important part of innovation, the out-of-class learning in addition. But thinking about this in innovation later in life, and certainly from an organizational perspective, innovation often happens when there's a lot of pressure. It's a little bit like how diamonds are formed in nature, when there's a lot of pressure, diamonds are formed, and I think very similar with innovation. These are often ideas that come around when you are under enormous pressure. That could be a revenue pressure from an entrepreneurship perspective, or if you're working within an organization, this might be pressure for your job or for the next promotion, or impressing somebody who's going to provide you with funding or whatever the case may be. So I think those type of learning opportunities should be firstly not overlooked, and from a university perspective we need to find ways to somehow, I think, recreate that. I'm not sure if it's possible within the safe space of being a university student. And so working with undergraduate, postgraduate and executive students, perhaps all in combination, maybe that could be a way to create that. But I'm still not sure if we really have found the answer for that to be replicated at university level.
I might just add to that. It has been really exciting to see at the university where I'm at over the last year even, the partnerships with industry, because expanding the conversation around student startups, of course that's an important emphasis and so on. We have been pursuing, and successfully I might say, partnerships with financial services companies. We've done large-scale strategic partnerships, which is my team, which is across the university. We try to be a one-door kind of access can opener, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, and pulling out, okay, this is what our real-world challenges that the industry is confronting, and pulling together multidisciplinary perspectives of senior academics and young people too, younger folks. We've done that in quantum technologies, using UK government funding, with Standard Chartered Bank, with Rigetti, hardware manufacturers, looking at cybersecurity applications. We've done that with NatWest, a number of partnerships in banking industry, my background, with Aberdeen, looking at the future technologies and how that's transforming. And I've not only been selling this concept, but for the past number of months I've been wearing an extra hat and actually running one of these centers for investing innovation. And so I've gotten to get into the weeds, for better or worse. And it's really interesting because there are different ways that these things can be structured, but when you're pulling together these kind of review boards to decide on which research projects to be funded, in some cases it's comprised both of the industry experts who are championing projects in partnership with the academics, and we're creating these workshops to kind of create a pipeline of ideas that are relevant. And so there are a number of schemes to support this, but just to add some examples of it, I agree with everything you're just saying about the importance of bringing that together, doing not only student startups, but spin-outs, and there's in the medical space, life sciences, we have major drug discovery, Eisai, Fujifilm Diasynthetics, and so on.
Just a quick one question. Who, out of interest, is curious, who comes to who? in that? I know it must be a mixture, but is it more the universities go out to the corporate world, pitching the partnership, or is it the other way around? Where do you see most traction? Are the corporates now coming to the university world saying, we need to work together, we see you're doing this, we could benefit, or or is it more the other way?
Well, I think our team was formed about 3 years ago, Strategic Partnerships, because there was an aspiration to do more big deals. Because I think more typically the industry side, where there was a kind of push from them, was lower level, right? So there weren't that many visionary C-level executives in major multinationals who were approaching, at least not so many, right, that were creating these partnerships. There were some examples of that, and we wanted to build more of them. But our job is kind of saying, these are examples, approaching folks, building up, and making those things happen.
I can add to that. I think collaboration is key. Sorry, if you've got a question, give me a, I won't put it on. Collaboration is key because collaboration brings different opportunities, and I think if you're asking where does it come from, who initiates it, I think it comes from both sides. Just recently, for instance, I've been approached by Bosch, asking me to come and speak about a specific topic because they feel that within the organization perhaps the view of the specific topic is quite limited. And so bringing new ideas to them might offer them an opportunity to start thinking differently about things. But at the same time, we might then think, well, there's an organization that we see in our area that's employing people within our region. Maybe there's an opportunity to place students for internships there. And at the same time, maybe if we worked with this organization, there could be some knowledge transfer opportunity. Yeah.
Thank you. So I think having heard a few of the perspectives, I'd like to offer mine. I think that having heard the perspective around, obviously we shouldn't narrow ourselves only to student startups, but I do think that might be taking it from the wrong perspective. I think as a student you don't necessarily see a lot of the opportunities that you could have, and I think there's a very narrow mindset in a way as a student that you're brought up. And I think you talked about how you may have been educated, however long ago it may have been, but I think that same basic mindset still is pervasive in that you have a structured way of making it to the top, and if you're 25, you have to work your way, you have to get the experience. If you have the experience, you should be more valued in the things that you say. But I think if we have that kind of rhetoric floating around too much, that a lot of the things that we shouldn't be focusing too much on students, I think we're not focusing necessarily enough. And I think, obviously you worked in South Africa, so I'd like to ask, is there a difference in mindset and approach between universities in other countries, let's say in South Africa, and compared to what you might have in the United Kingdom?
I think there's some great universities in the United Kingdom, certainly. In a similar way, in South Africa, there's some universities doing some really great work in terms of changing mindsets. If we think about where mindsets come from parenting, if you like. I'm a parent. And if I have to look through the world, through the way that I'm treating my children, it's about helping your children to find a career that I think is best for them, right? That's going to limit their risk, that's going to help them to have a safe journey to adulthood and maybe having kids of their own and so forth. But any advice that I'm giving them is based on my own experiences. And those experiences were all built in a world where my children never existed and probably won't ever exist. So that we probably have to question where these mindsets come from. And I think you as young students at the moment probably are exposed to some of that, because I'm sure there's some guidance from your parents, and I'm not saying guidance from parents are wrong, not by all means, because obviously parents have a responsibility in one way or another. But coming back to your question, I think there's specifically two universities, the University of Stellenbosch and the University of Cape Town, that's doing some great work in terms of collaboration. Next week, for instance, I'll be at a conference in Cape Town around impact investment in Africa, organized by the University of Cape Town specifically, engaging with industry, involving students in the arrangement of this, a little bit like some of you were part of this today. And once again, bringing students together with organizations, funding bodies, early and growth stage businesses, where these innovative ideas can come from, because once again, there's a diversity of ideas and experience levels and maybe even ages if you're talking about being 25, for instance, or maybe even younger as you are at the moment. And I think, one of the great things about South Africa, I've been in the UK for quite some time now, is that there's a real diverse society. And once again, diversity is seen in many different ways, but certainly in order for innovation to be prevalent and healthy within the organization or within the country or within the university, it all comes from diversity, because it's these diverse cultures or ways of upbringing or ways of thinking that sees things in a different way that can open up a conversation where innovation comes from. So I'm not sure if I completely answered your question, but I hope at least some of it.
But the other thing, just trying to join the two, is, and I might be stretching it somewhat, but innovation is a huge subject. So you can go and do many courses at university, and innovation will be part of the syllabus. So everyone has a view on innovation, whatever age you are, whatever background you are, what innovation is, what's good innovation, what's bad innovation. I think actually through universities or any collaboration with large companies or corporates outside the bubble will actually help you to understand innovation more. And what I mean is the painful side of innovation, because you could, with all due respect, go and study a whole subject in innovation, go and do an MSc somewhere in innovation or an undergrad course in innovation and think you know everything, and go and then with an idea to a large company and it goes flat on its face. It's all to do with the culture of the company, big business, how slow things are, what else is happening. You don't see that with all due respect in a book. So I think if you get a great situation where you've got the academics there, the principles, the modules, all this kind of stuff, and there's a corporate there as well, looking to build something new, I think as a younger undergrad, actually being part of that and seeing sometimes the frustrations, the stops, go, start, that's a really good learning in life, because things aren't as simple as they should be, especially in innovation. So I think having that kind of experience of it's not a smooth ride, through being linked to corporations and seeing corporations come in and working on briefs together. I know quite a lot of corporates go to university with briefs and students work on it and things like that. I think that's a really good learning about the frustrations. Because I deal with a lot of startups who will go for a corporate and it's bang on for that corporate what they do, 100% here, but things don't happen or things take 10 times as long. It's no one's fault, that's just life. And I think the sooner you can be prepared for that, understand why it happens, the more chance you'll be successful as an innovator, as a startup, or even an entrepreneur, just understanding that things take time. So I do think that there's a perfect mix of universities, the experience there, what you can learn there, the course you're doing, whatever it may be, but getting that outside world in, where you're dealing with large corporates as well, and understanding their challenges outside of the brief, just general challenges they have in work, is a great learning as well. So you're seeing a lot of startups now employing ex-corporate people, just because they need people to understand the customer they're going to and help their idea get through. So that's a big area at the moment. So it's that whole culture of a large company isn't necessarily, it might be now, I don't know, but in my day it wasn't taught, and that's a really big learning if you want to innovate, be it internally as an entrepreneur or go to them as a startup. How big companies operate can be quite surprising in real life. So I think it's really good getting large companies in, and that's a big part of innovation, because everyone's learning together and it's not a straight path.
Sorry. Thank you. Hi, Chris Moore. I'm a technology specialist at the Department for Business and Trade. I spend a lot of time talking to companies that are interested to grow, particularly at the startup stage. But I was interested in the comments you were just making and to offer a few points around different kinds of ecosystems around the world. Firstly, in Latin America, there's a very successful acceleration program which helps startups to grow. It's actually supported by Wayra, which is in turn backed by Telefonica, one of the biggest telcos in the world. In Israel, they call themselves the Startup Nation, and government intervention and support both from private sector and the incubator environment has led to the creation of many, many successful international startups coming out of Israel. But also in the UK, we have some great examples, and I think the one that springs to mind when we think about universities is an incubator called Set Squared, which I think works with half a dozen universities in the south and southwest, and I think they won an award for being the best university linked incubator program. So really, that's a long introduction to say, in your view, what elements are really important to create successful innovation, either directly linked to your university or a little bit detached from it?
That's a good question. I worked a little bit with Z Squared when I was at Surrey, which was another 15, 16 years ago, and they do some great work. I'm still a believer that these innovative ideas need to, I mean, there's two parts to innovation, because look, we all have a lot of ideas, and typically whether it's in the shower or in the morning when you wake up, or maybe you're going for a long walk with the dog, in my case, for instance, those are the ideas, but it's also about taking those ideas forward, and whether that's related to human confidence, whether it's about the infrastructure around you, whether it's about people explaining to you what this means and how to develop it a little bit further. And so, I think there's the incentives perhaps for people to be safe to bring these ideas forward, not necessarily always going to do what your parents say that you should be doing, which in my own case, I'm guilty of that myself. And then having the funders around you, having the universities perhaps where students might be being open-minded enough to invite disagreement. I think one of the big challenges at universities, in the way that I experienced universities where I studied, is that ideas were imposed on you because the person in front studied for longer than you did, and for that reason he or she is right in what they are saying. And as the world has evolved and as the world has moved on, we need to be more open to different people having different ideas. I think government funded, as the Israeli model, I think is enormously powerful, and I think from my perspective that's very much a cultural thing. And I think when the culture makes it not only sexy to start something, but provides enough support, both from a funding perspective, but also the way that these ideas are being taken forward into both being supported by service providers, investors being in place to take the right ideas forward, and making sure that the specific markets know about these ideas so that they can be developed further. It takes a whole ecosystem, and I think that's the key here.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I'm just saying we've got online, I think guys here from Portsmouth. Guy Henry, if Guy can hear us. Maybe not. Well, if you can hear us, Guy, do jump in. Good to hear what the Portsmouth angle on the whole thing about innovation. And I think what you're saying, just to carry on the conversation flow, I think there's some really good examples here. I don't know if there's a right size fits all. I'm a real believer that you kind of find your own path, and I think universities have a role to play, corporations have a role to play, working together has a role to play. I think some super ideas out there. I mean, I forget the name of it, but there's a situation, I think it's Founders First, whatever it is out here, where you can actually go there with not even an idea, and it's like a boy band in the music. They will say, well, if you've got an idea, you want to be an entrepreneur, we will set you up with a CTO and everything, and we give you some ideas and we get you in to start business. Now, I'm still getting my head around that, but it works, and I think it's a fantastic opportunity, which logically doesn't feel quite right, but it works. So, and that's not to do with universities, but I think there's lots of ways you can be innovative, be a startup, be it as a sole graduate startup or through corporations, all mixing together. So I think it's a great thing. I'm not saying this country uniquely, but I think there's lots of opportunities out there to do what you feel is right for you in many, many different ways, rather than here's the 5 steps you have to go through to be a successful, innovative person.
So I think it links quite nicely back into what we were just saying about.
Well, the mic's up.
It's fine, I'll just speak freely. So I think it links quite nicely back into what you were talking about, mostly about Yusa, about how it's changed as well, how we've changed. So actually, a few months ago, I was down at the Tomorrow's Engineer Lives conference, and I actually spoke there as well, which is, for those of you who don't know, it's like a big conference with... it's a big conference with a bunch of corporate companies discussing education for us. And the first thing they noticed is it's a bunch of tons of people, most of them like haven't been in school in like 20 years, trying to figure out how they should change their systems to fit us. So leading on to that, what they realized is they don't have as much of a student input because the education has changed. What we've gone through is definitely different to what happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago. So how does probably more on the flip side of things, how did the corporate world and universities, how do they adapt their current model of startups to fit this constantly changing method that we've got?
I think one of the big opportunities that organizations have today is access to data. And as long as you have a culture that's open-minded enough to be listening and observing this data, as many companies that we might know, like Google, for instance, are doing today, then you will have access to the different ideas. Because typically, as long as you have the structure in place in order to include the data within your decision making, if you like, whether that is customer search data or product view data or even social media conversations based data, then you can bring these ideas into your decision making. So I agree. I think the world's moving away from, well, maybe not the whole world. There's a lot of companies who still believe that the top part of the organization knows more than everyone else, and for that reason they need to be the ones who are deciding which way to go. But I think the more you can engage both your consumers, the data that you have access to, people at all parts of the organization, to come up with the innovative ideas, the more healthy your idea pool will be. So yeah, that's probably as much as I can say.
I might take it in a different angle if I understood the question correctly of how universities can adapt to changing and entrepreneurial methods and technologies. Is that kind of? Yeah, I would say one of the things we launched more recently is this Edinburgh Futures Institute, which is really all about the multidisciplinarity of the world in which we live, and breaking down the silos. So this is one of 5 hubs that have been created out of this city region deal in Scotland, which was over £1 billion to really pursue this aspiration to be the data capital of Europe. Okay, and so it's applying data with different sectors, and in the Edinburgh Futures Institute in particular, it's probably the most multidisciplinary hub. Other hubs, the Bayes Center is close to the informatics and deep technologies. There's Usher Institute, very close with the medical, agri-food, agri-tech. There's these dedicated hubs, but then the Edinburgh Futures Institute is really pulling it all together. So I think that's a way in which an ancient university is keeping with the times and pulling kind of change makers from across the university, across all the schools, and breaking down their silos and hierarchies to get them all working together and providing some really cross-disciplinary new programs for students, and then of course layering across it all the entrepreneurship opportunities for those who want to engage. Yeah.
Well, there's a question that someone asking the Zoom, if I may take that. Somebody, please go ahead. Somebody, can you hear me?
Just
yeah, go ahead.
Sort of apologies for popping off mute. I hope you can hear me. Just a question from the
You're going to introduce yourself first?
here.
Go ahead.
A short while ago, the discussion was going around sort of the difficulties from within a corporation, the kind of foster innovation. And I mean, first, I'd like to second that. I've recently joined the workforce myself, and one of the hats I wear is finding out ways that we can be, more innovative in the way that we do things. And sort of having joined one of the big 4 accountancy firms, you can appreciate the size of organization and the difficulty in kind of making things happen. So I just wanted to kind of ask a question around how best you think that sort of, greasing the wheels can occur. Especially when dealing with sort of organizations at scale, and kind of getting, fairly young people, new people in the workforce at this sort of a company to start thinking in those innovative ways.
I think, if I heard the question correctly, I think corporations have a challenge as well, because there's a lot of corporations, to your point, who I would still think that the more senior you are, the more you know, and the more you know the answers, whereas the world out there is changing so quickly. So I know one of my clients at P&G said that there's $1 trillion R&D department out there called the Startup World. And if you don't plug into it and find out what they're doing, by the time you build something, someone's built it 10 times better 10 years before. I mean, you just got to go out there and see what's happening. So I think ignore it at your peril is one thing, but that's easy to say. I think there is definitely a lack of awareness and understanding of startup world from a corporate perspective. I still think a lot of my potential clients will still think startups are, I've said this so many times, 18-year-old acne-ridden coders in bedrooms. Corporate people think, well, I'm not going to deal with an 18-year-old in the bedroom coding. I've got a big business to run, or I've got a big brand to look after. So I think there's still that naive view of startups, which is great for business for me, because I can connect people up, but there's that perception problem. I think the other one is a cultural clash, because if you're going to get people coming in, how can, you've got a huge business and a small business, work at different speeds, see things, the same thing in a different way. And I think that there's a cultural perspective as well there, which takes some time to overcome, and that takes some time to nurture and nourish and this kind of thing. So I think corporations haven't got all the answers. I think the challenge is sometimes realising they don't have all the answers, and when they do realise there's answers out there, it needs people to facilitate that, or to be wary that what you want from the other side isn't what you're going to get. So, for example, I deal quite a lot with large companies thinking that the next startup they meet will be the next Facebook or whatever, and they're going to triple their arm and return on investment overnight. No, that's not going to happen. And a lot of startups will think, I've got to talk next week with Adidas or someone, they're going to be my ticket out here, I'm going to get an exit. That's not going to happen either. So it's a bit like a first date, trying to join people up. So I do think corporations have as much of a challenge to, one, understand what the art of the possible is, but also how you incorporate that into your business and start working with these different entities, which is what startups are. And I imagine it's the same for corporations with universities, because everyone will have a perception of universities, having been to one or not, and they've got to understand that is an opportunity to help us get to where we want to get to with our brand or our company. So I might be wrong, guys, but is that a problem as well, this perception of education in universities from people in the corporate world? I have a challenge getting corporations to understand that the startup world could have lots of answers for them. Do you think it's a challenge for corporates realising that universities could have lots of answers for them or help them on their way?
I think there's many different university models. Today at Brunel we've been working proactively with industry to contribute towards the degrees that we are developing and teaching, so to make sure that they have input, and for that reason see the value in terms of what we teaching. If I can just quickly go back to the initial question, I think there's probably many ways that organizations can do this. Some companies obviously do it through acquisition, and that's a fairly well-known model in terms of looking for startups out there that might add value. That in itself perhaps acknowledges the shortcoming of innovation within large organizations, and the fact that they're looking for startups to bring some of those new ideas into the organizations. But it's in many ways it's a cultural change, and so what we typically find with organizations is that only when the company starts to struggle, so they start to lose revenue or market share or have new competition, when they start to employ new people, maybe at the senior level. And at that stage, then there's a bit of a culture change that invite new ideas, probably perhaps from different parts of the organization. I think the original idea that young people coming into the organization has everything to learn and nothing to give is a bit outdated, because in many ways there are many organizations today who specifically recruit. If I think about companies like Capgemini, for instance, who recruit new recruits with no previous experience, specifically because they don't want those previously tainted experiences to spoil the ideas that they can bring an opportunity for innovation within the organization. So I think companies are changing their points of view, but it's really about a cultural change. Coming back to your question, I think yes, there needs to be more work between universities and collaboration with industry. As my colleague mentioned, that obviously Edinburgh is doing already, we're doing the same at Brunel, because through this collaboration, once again coming to the theme of this evening, is where innovation comes from. And as soon as there's too much of, we believe in our way, they believe in their way type of approach, then we are preventing the opportunity for ideas to be shared, and for that reason, innovation to happen.
Hi, I'm Divya. I contribute to NASDAQ on AI and Web3, and I also run my own startup. It's a blockchain-based startup. I think that's, to your point, I think that's fantastic when you're collaborating with startups and industry, wherein you have executive and residents and such. That's really powerful, because innovation can be from within industries. It's probably 10-year-old, 20-year-old, even 100-year-old organization to a brand new startup, which is probably 1 year, 2 year, or 3 year, or a scale up. And also it could be internal. And the point is, as long as we acknowledge and kind of lend a help, work together, and that's where the power lies. It could be at any stage. It could be, of course, it could be a student for sure. But as you rightly said, not everybody is kind of set for it. But organizations at all levels, if they're encouraged and made aware of these partnerships that are available, which I'm just so excited about, because we are having these early conversations with universities and saying how we can get involved. So it's fantastic. Yeah, thank you.
I completely agree, and congratulations with what you've achieved already. My question, I have a question back to you, if you like. So, the business that you started, where did the idea from that business come from? Did it come from your existing job? Did it come from another angle? So I think we need to understand that a little bit better.
So that's a very good question. So Jenny and I co-founded HQ NFTs. It's a no-code NFT platform. So what really happened is we were running another platform called My Social Pulse. It's a data science company where we do analytics. We do 8 emotions and 3 sentiments. And so we created an analytical platform for NFTs where you can analyze and, NFTs, especially the profile pictures like the Bored Apes, the CryptoPunks, they lend themselves to the style of a Pokemon cards. So they have rarities built into it. And we did that, we built a platform around analytics, basically ranking rarity. And I was speaking at an event about exactly a year ago when a few artists, just approached me and said, hey, I'm having a trouble creating an NFT collection on a contract. Then it became very evident that very few people have the skills, and really, for a fact, there are only about a few 100,000 blockchain developers who really know how to create these contracts, these frameworks, and there are about 18 million, web developers. So just to put that, it just can't scale. So we saw a real problem, and we went after it, and we created this no-code platform. But now, having said that, from there we've gone on to do all sorts of use cases with NFTs, and it's really exciting where we are. But I'm really looking forward to these sort of collaborating with universities and seeing how we can scale and move forward, because at the end of the day, innovation happens when when universities and industry comes together, and especially because the size that we are, I think we're in a great place to kind of work together, I suppose, because we have not as much bureaucracy possibly when it comes to a large organization.
I think what you also in many ways are reflecting is maybe some of the shortcomings of universities in terms of the traditional degree model, because to create a university degree takes time. You're probably going to work on it for a good year at least to get through the different hurdles and get it approved, and obviously get industry input and so forth. And in terms of the type of technologies and innovation in technologies that you're talking about, that is happening constantly. And so I think we need to find a better model in terms of integrating more of that into the way that we are teaching, and whether that's through maybe providing more of an opportunity for experimentation, I'm not sure. But I think inviting more of this into universities, can only be beneficial to everyone.
Absolutely, I can't agree more, because I tell you, when we were doing natural language processing, NLP and language models about 2 years ago, people were like, what is this? Now 3 years on, 3 months on, the last 3 months ever since ChatGPT of the world have released, everybody's now coming back to us, can we have a conversation? I'm like, yeah, this is what we were talking about a few years ago, right? So this is where it is. It's unless they see something really, stare in their face, and it's only then the people seem to kind of take it seriously, I suppose. But yeah, I'm so glad that I'm kind of getting to know about the sort of collaborations that are available, between industry and universities, and we're looking to sort of explore that. And I guess that's the only way we can, everybody can grow and keep up, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good. Thank you.
Pratap again from TCS. In my mind, the Innovator's Dilemma book and that author basically framed this problem very, very, very well. So there are 4 types of innovation. One is that there is an existing service to an existing market, and you improve it incrementally. Improve an existing service to an existing market incrementally. That is one type of innovation. Another type of innovation is you offer an existing service to a new market. That's a different type of innovation. Third type of innovation is offer a new service into an existing market. That's the third type of innovation. And fourth type of innovation is offering new service into a new market. My question to you is, what areas is the university good at? Is it good at all of them? In my mind, basically, university is suitable for disruptive innovation because corporates do not understand. Startup goes in pitches, nobody understands. So unless the startup basically germinates in the university, it's the problem. I call it the problem of the person with the unique mousetrap. The unique mousetrap person, he has to build it all out, and till he basically shows it fully to somebody and delivers the value of his innovation, he cannot sleep. That's the thing. But what the main question is, among these four types of innovations, what is suitable for universities?
Yeah, I might take an initial stab. I think, I was at a talk at the House of Lords earlier today, and there was a distinguished professor who has a very long tenure, and he was reflecting on some of these elements where, in the medical field, for instance, the initial innovations, for instance, that laid the groundwork for the vaccines, right, during the pandemic, really was 20 years ago, some of the key elements, and then through the R&D, through these different, and when I was thinking about our talk today, innovation, what are we really talking about? I think it's helpful you bring up this matrix because, there's some fundamental research in the academic world and looking at the translational elements. We talk about these TRL levels, and it's really the levels of very early stage innovation and moving it up. So what we've been doing, I can just say at the University of Edinburgh, is we've found some really great corporate partners where there's some senior visionary executive, and this kind of intersects with a question that came over the WebEx or whatever, over the video call. How do you grease the wheels? If you have senior level corporate sponsorship, that definitely greases the wheels, right? Because a lot of organizations are hierarchical. And so when we have that fundamental partnership with that visionary leader that's maybe more on the earlier stage innovation, what we're now exploring, and what's honestly an easier sell, is when there's that closer real world applicability. And so we've been doing things where we're marrying up some of those earlier stage, and maybe UK government funding even came in, right? There's various schemes to pursue those more early stage research, but then moving it on up, working with the incubators, working with the accelerators that we have, working with the ecosystem, there's Scottish government funding and so on. So I think we have probably that background. Your kind of stereotype of the university is probably not wrong. That's the core. But then we've been definitely building out that ecosystem and plugging into that broader ecosystem. Yeah.
If I can add to that, I think it's important to realize that there's probably a space for all four of those opportunities, because sometimes we find that if innovation happens too quickly and the market might not be ready for that, which I think is also something that you referred to, then that might be time and energy and resources that could have been better spent elsewhere. And so it's important to understand that innovation is only going to be as good as the application of those innovations within the market. So something related to what we saw with COVID, for instance, and all the different bits of technology that played a part in that, and then there was a time when that could be used because there was a real need for it, where prior to that perhaps there might not necessarily have been the need for that, and for that reason that innovation would have been out of place. I think in the same way, from a university perspective, it's important that we realize that we have different types of students learning different types of subjects, and there's not necessarily a need for dramatic innovation for each one of those. But coming back to the idea of collaboration with different organizations, some organizations would require that you look at things in a different way because they've got a unique problem that we haven't been able to solve previously. While other organizations are simply just trying to understand, well, how do we make incremental improvements in terms of what we're doing at the moment so that we can keep on growing our revenue in a way that perhaps Apple is often doing in recent years. And so, from my perspective, I think there's a room for all 4 of those areas. And it really just depends on the partners that we're working with. And the important thing here is to make sure that we are collaborating and are open to those different partnerships that might then lead to different types of innovation from the university perspective.
I think just another thing that to a spanner in the works is sometimes when you go to large corporations and you get an innovation department and someone is head of innovation. In some days gone by, that would be deemed as a fantastic job. You're going to learn about new things, but I would say it's more the case now as the poison chalice, because innovation means different things to different people within that company. So you could sit there heading up innovation and thinking these are the 3 or 4 things we're going to do, but someone else on the board, C-suite, sees innovation in a different way, or someone else expects something different from what you're doing. And half the challenge is trying to put across what you're trying to do and get everyone to sign up to it. So even before you start collaborating with anyone, I think there's a challenge sometimes in large companies. People don't actually really align what they see innovation is for their company. They see it as many different things. Some people see it as let's experiment a bit and let's try new things. We can afford to fail, but let's try and get to where we need to get to. Try by being open, a bit of freedom, be very fluid. And other people see, no, we've got to get some return on investment quite quickly. Or we don't go in that area, or we go in that area. But it's almost like too many voices. So I would argue one of the challenges, even before you start collaborating, is the large corporate actually aligning on what they see innovation means, but also what the output is they want from it at the end of a set period. Because I think that is part of the problem. There's different expectations and perceptions as it goes on. And there's always someone who is not quite impressed with what comes out the other end sometimes. So there's a cultural thing within the large companies as well as anything else to be challenged. I think we've got a question.
So, my name is Matthew, and I'm one of the students here. And so, let me first say, I agree with the fact that I think one of the biggest pitfalls for up-and-coming entrepreneurs is the issue of not understanding the big corporate world. But I think, one of the ways that students like me and prospective entrepreneurs would want to get an idea is through spring weeks or summer internships at university. And I know that, especially in the finance sector, which is what I'm interested in myself, it's massively oversubscribed, and a lot of people looking to get an understanding of the corporate world are actually left without a spring week, without an internship, and then are unable to get that understanding, and then are less possible to be successful in the entrepreneurship field. So my question is, first of all, is there anything that I as a student can do apart from applying for spring weeks and internships to better bridge this gap? And B, is there anything that universities are doing to better bridge this gap?
I think that there probably could be many ways to answer that question, because if you think about the idea of entrepreneurship in itself and being successful as an entrepreneur, part of that might have been that many doors were closed, whether that was for employment or finding a solution to what somebody was looking for, a problem to solve. And what that entrepreneur did differently to everybody else who didn't manage to solve the problem was to find a different way of addressing it. And so in many ways, perhaps any answer that we're going to provide with you now is limited in itself to our own experience, because we might not necessarily have been in your shoes. So maybe the answer there is to actually then engage with startups like the lady here that spoke a little bit earlier. Maybe the idea is simply to get a bunch of friends together and say, well, why don't we create something ourselves? The whole idea of understanding what happens in the corporate world and how things are done, and the cultures there is an opportunity, but can also be a limitation, because as soon as you start to understand how people typically do something, you try to in many ways fit in with that, right? Because if you want to go into finance and let's say you want to work for, JP Morgan or whatever the case may be, part of moving up into that organization is to fit into the culture of how they do things. Immediately that means that you start to look at the world like this, and you start to miss out on the many entrepreneurship-related or entrepreneurial opportunities around there. So I think some of these answers you need to find yourselves by being proactive. I'm very well aware as a parent that there is a wealth of information, probably some of it which I don't want my children to have access to, but they do anyway, whether I can control it or not. I think as long as you have the drive to find the answers, for every door that closes, in terms of a company not being open to Springer weeks or open days or whatever the case may be, there will be others that will be open. There will be some early stage startups at incubators at level 23 in Canary Wharf, for instance, that might be interested in students who are coming to ask the right questions. So I think look at it in different ways. Don't necessarily only follow the norm and say, well, this is typically what happens. These are the opportunities that I have, and if I can't find these opportunities, I'm going to feel downhearted about it. The fact that you can't find that opportunity is an opportunity in itself for you to find a different way of doing things.
I think, to echo that, and I've got my bugbear at the moment, I'd say, and it's an old term, but it still rings true, I think you've just got to start networking. I think there is a danger sometimes that people believe what's online is the options they've got, so they see there's certain things, if you don't get on there, my chance is gone. And yes, definitely use online as a place for online. I'm not saying go offline, because online is amazing nowadays, you can get lots of opportunities, you can find out lots of things, but the good old-fashioned coming to events like this, and there's loads of them, especially in London and cities in this country, just go and meet people, talk to people, and you'll be amazed that, I think people, to my view, some people get mixed up with network and they think you're going to go somewhere and you've got to go there and find a person who's going to give you that internship. That isn't how it works. So you might bump into someone who says, God, that's really interesting what you're looking for. I might know someone you should have a chat with. And that person might be someone, or that person may know someone who can get you that internship. I remember years ago when I was doing a master's, I needed to do a 3-month internship, and I was really struggling. I sent, in those days, letters out to people, and everything came back saying, thank you very much, not this time, but we'll put you on the record, which basically means your letter goes in the bin. And then I was down at the pub one Friday evening, and I was chatting to an old school friend I hadn't seen for 20 years, and with all due respect to, I forget the lady's name, but I think she had an admin job in Bristol Myers Squibb, and their head office was down the road. She goes, I don't understand what you're looking for, Ken, but my boss does that kind of thing. I'll have a chat with him. And then this is when you had home phone numbers, no mobiles. And then literally 2 days later, she phoned up and said, do you want to come and see my boss? I went to see the boss who was head of IT or something in those days, and I got a 3-month internship. So I never ever would have thought that that conversation with an old school friend I hadn't seen for about 15 years would lead to me solving my internship problem. But I do believe the more you get out there, it sounds obvious, but it's so true, the more you get out there, go to events like this, chat to people, articulate as you do very well what you're looking for, without sounding frustrated or, feel like everything's been done wrong for you. Just literally say, I'm looking for this at the moment. You'll be amazed how many people want help and say, actually, you know what, you should look at this, or there's an event coming up. I see, give me your email address or whatever, or text, I'll send you the link. People are, especially in the startup world, I think people are much more prone and willing to help people, especially young people coming through. So I would say one piece of advice would be to go online, see what's online, but just get up and about like you are now and talk to people. And you'll be amazed how you'll get introduced to people. You actually forget one day how you got that introduction led to something, but it will happen if you go out and talk to people. Any more questions?
Hi, sorry, I just have one question. I'm Shub, and I'm also from Queen Elizabeth School in Barnet. So I just wanted to ask, right now, if you look at the way universities work, or how they're subscribed to, people go in with the mindset that, okay, I want to go into investment banking, so I need an economics degree. Or I want to go into engineering, so I need a physics degree. Or the same with doctoring in medicine. So, but obviously there's so many different degrees and so many different careers that you can go into, right? So how are universities trying to change, or are universities trying to change that perception? Because obviously, we've been hearing that what we go for today and the jobs that we'll have in the future, they will have no correlation because the jobs in the future don't exist yet. So how are universities kind of bridging that gap and getting people educated for the skills that we will need in the future, but we don't know about yet?
I think there's two parts to this question, once again, because on the one side, I think your question indicates the onus on the university to make the choices that students are supposed to be making, to find the combination of degrees, degree-based education and non-degree-based education, to find the networking opportunities that the gentleman referred to a little bit earlier. So on the one side, remember that, as I sometimes say to students in the class, if there's 200 of them in the class, at some point each one of them are going to be competing with each other for a job. The university is not in the position to help you to differentiate yourself from your colleagues. It's about you finding that unique combination of skills and maybe whether those are different degrees that you studied, and maybe outside of university activities that you engaged with, and startups or larger companies that you networked with, or experiments that you created with your colleagues that creates that unique skill set where the organization is saying, well, you are the one that I want, because you are going to help us to think differently. You didn't comply with the way that education works like everybody else. You didn't go study your politics and economics and then you went into financial management or whatever your master's degree was. You found a unique combination, and those are the skills and the ways of thinking that we are looking for. So on the one side, universities can do part of this, and what many students might do is that they might do an undergraduate at one university and a postgraduate somewhere else, because different universities in themselves have different offerings. Other students might do 2 different degrees at the same university, but also everything that you do around it, all those extramural activities, the little startup ideas that you might work with, the friends that you experiment with, in terms of developing NFT-related technologies and working with other businesses that are doing something similar. It's up to you in many ways to find the unique combination that's going to set you apart from everybody else that's going to apply for the same job as you do. So the university, in a similar way that kids often look up to their parents and say, well, what are my parents going to do to help me to get the job and the career that I want? There's 2 parts to that relationship. And in the end, it's up to you to take the responsibility to find those unique combinations that's going to make you employable, with the support of the different universities and their offerings as they have it. So we've already spoken about what some of the universities are doing, including both the universities presented here, where we engage with industry, where we work with both government and private funders, where we set up incubators and so forth. Even at that level, there will be many students who take those opportunities further. And it's up to them once again to find unique combinations to differentiate yourself, because in the end it's all about differentiation that's going to help you to get the job instead of any of your other colleagues sitting here this evening.
Before we take the questions, we're going to wrap up by 8 p.m. So probably we'll club the question together. Sorry.
Okay, so just extending on this point, Ashish from Financial Services. So just extending on this point, I wanted to check, so there are basic subjects in university course, the elective subjects. Does the university ever think of bringing in domain specialist subjects in their electives? So that, say for example, I'm interested in telecom sector. You take an elective subject in telecom where you are getting the industry knowledge, but you are applying what you are learning in theory, maybe accounting, maybe technology, into that particular domain, so that I have the industry knowledge also as well as the theoretical knowledge that is coming in, probably making it easier for me to think maybe a little differently or radically in that particular stream, and probably support innovation or changes, or maybe improve the system that the industry is currently facing. So, and can industries support such domain subjects in universities currently who are supporting innovation? Can they do something like that?
Was there another question? I think Sapash was saying, let's
Akansha?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Akansha. I'm a student at UCL. I was actually going to ask a question similar to what Shub just asked, but I'm actually instead going to contribute to what you've just said. I think from the perspective of a university student, you're asking how do we incorporate enterprise when we're not talking about like the set curriculum and elective modules, and I think that's a place where societies come into big play. So, I mean, for example, at UCL we have over 500 societies, ranging from everything you can possibly think of, and within those we have partnerships with firms, which means that not only do they within societies teach you, just like you were saying, telecoms, there will be like societies which will have like an 8-week boot camp or workshops every week to teach you those things, but they will also have people from firms coming in and speaking about their own experiences and giving their own advice, and then giving their own knowledge to students. I think
True. No, that's true. What you're saying is right. But here comes the money part, basically, I think, or the resources part. So societies do bring the platform, but I don't think they bring in the resources also, right? They are not able to get resources in to grow the innovation in that region. So yeah, you're right. I mean, it's not a structured approach. That's just a thought that I had, whether it is possible to combine the two. Societies do function in that area, I understand. But probably they might be limited in terms of what resources they can command. People come, go from that society very easily. So I don't know how that works, whether it is something possible or not.
I mean, there's definitely funding available, and the gentleman at the back, being a executive in residence at Brunel, for instance, that's exactly what they do. We use people within organisations to come and speak to the students. We utilise them to contribute towards curriculum development. We offer students opportunities to do internships with them. We bring industry speakers to come and speak to students about different opportunities within the organisation, or how different technologies are playing out there. So obviously dependent on the topic that you're teaching, students need to have exposure over what is happening within industry. So unless I'm misunderstanding your question, I think from a university perspective, many universities, including our own today, the reality is you need to be focusing on making students employable, because those employable students are going to refer other potential students, whether it's family and friend members, to come and study with your university. And so the more employable you can make your students, the more better organizations they're going to be employed within, meaning then they can come back and speak to the students when they start to work within organizations. Meaning that they're probably volunteering their time, so we need fewer of the resources that you're indicating at the moment, with which we're paying people to come and speak to our students. So I think there's a lot of that happening within universities, certainly today. I think the UCL example is a good one. The Edinburgh example also, I think you mentioned quite a few examples in terms of that. So I think universities have moved on a lot over the last probably 10 to 20 years in terms of becoming very industry focused in what we are doing.
And executive education. I don't know, the way I was interpreting your question at the beginning was more around executive education, but perhaps I didn't understand that correctly.
Not sure, because I'm not studying the system here, so I can't be sure.
So yeah, just to say, if you were touching on that concept, but sometimes the continuous learning opportunities for established professionals is also very important, right? The world is changing so quickly. I know I'm preaching to the choir, that's why so many professionals are here tonight, right? Because everyone's trying to stay abreast of what's happening. And I think forums like this are a great avenue for that. Universities as well are adapting and providing trainings. We did a partnership with NatWest. We're providing climate finance, trainings to like 16,000 of their employees. So it is an interesting cycle where, as Ben, you were just mentioning, right, the employees, the alum, the intersections coming back, contributing, enriching that whole ecosystem. So yeah.
Do one more question? Just 2 more. Okay. We got time to.
Yeah. Last 2 questions. Yes, please.
Hi, I'm Dipesh. I'm from QE as well. I just wanted to add on to the point about resources available, because you see currently students in STEM in the UK, like let's take computer science, it's a course that's often taught to students, and students end up learning the theory, and let's say majority go into web dev or other jobs, whereas like a module in computer science is robotics or quantum computing, whereas in the US like they have labs that hold massive quantum computers, and there are 4 degrees for quantum computing, and then the students have like a higher reach for innovation and their own like firms. So I feel that my question is, how do you feel that the UK can change for that? And also like the fact that students need experience in the industry before they can get like a good employable job. So how do you feel that can change?
Sorry, can I also ask Mac? Maybe we can have your question as well.
Yeah, this is my friend. Thank you. This is Makar. One quick question. Do students have access to any safeguarding
framework, mechanism, in case things go sideways?
Okay, two very different questions, if you like. So if you don't mind, I'll start with your safeguarding question first.
Thank you.
I think safeguarding is a challenging issue because obviously, the web, as a very basic example, is very large and it's difficult to control everything that students are doing all the time. Certainly, I think most universities today are spending a lot of time on working with mental health related issues, educating students, perhaps not at university level, probably at school level already, because if I think about my 11-year-old, for instance, he's certainly learning at school level what safeguarding is, what safe use of the internet and technology, for instance, is around. And that is reiterated, I think, throughout their schooling. By the time students get to university, and they're probably 18, 19, it's a little bit more difficult to re-educate them in that regard, if you like. But obviously, frameworks are provided, support is provided, mental health support is certainly provided. So I think that there is an awareness that needs to be provided to students, and that is happening. Coming back to your question, I think many universities today are working with industries to sponsor and support labs and so forth, and other types of technologies with which they are using. So I think maybe just choose your university carefully, find out from them what they are doing, how much of these resources are available to their students. And you'll probably find that many of them are working very closely with industry to provide more of this and access to, to these type of labs for the students.
Yeah, I would second that. Having spent the majority of my life working in the U.S. and being educated in the U.S., and then also now being here for a little bit and getting a sense of what's happening here, I would say, it's not so dramatically different, the extent of industry collaborations.
I think the only thing I'd say when I did the degree was, and I'm sure you still do it now, but it doesn't seem so obvious now, but you used to have a lot of sandwich degrees, have a placement year. And that used to be the norm. So I did a business degree and you had a sandwich year, and they had a department there that would help you have 1 year with an industry. You'd have a set project which is dealing with an area they've got they need your help in. So whatever you studied, accountancy, whatever it was, and they would give you an accountancy-related project. So not only would you learn about working with a big company and you put it on your CV, but you say, here's my project that they used. And I don't know, but that seems to have gone a bit now. So you go to universities now and they say, well, it used to be a 4-year degree, it's a 3-year degree. We do placements and we can help you get a placement. But the problem with that is that if you've got a group of friends and you're in your 2nd year and one of you goes on a placement and the other one's don't, you're going to come back in that final year and all your mates have gone. So everyone just says, oh, well, students need a bit of a kick and a bit of a handheld. And that's what the placement year did, you have to get a placement. So in your 2nd year, you're thinking, I've got to get a placement. And I think that's one of the best things I felt on my course was not only what you learned, but you had a year's work experience and you had a project you could show that was used in, hopefully by industry, to go out to the job market with. So it sounds very basic, and I don't know if it's still out there, but it seems to have fallen off a little bit.
Yeah, I can't speak authoritatively for the UK and US on that, but I do recall at Georgia Tech, where I did my undergrad and went back for my MBA, they did do, some folks opted for co-op.
Yeah.
And it was actually interspersed, so you do your year of regular studies, and this was such that it prevented you falling out of sync with your classmates. So over the summers, though, you would have this regular going back to the same corporation. And what we have here that I've seen is with most of our master's programs, there's student projects that are paired up, and also we have like a FinTech PhD and these things where you're embedded working with the companies and getting that experience, real world experience.
Good, thank you. Now, before I really formally end the session, Shubh wanted to say something on behalf of the students. So you want to use it? Oh, yes, yeah.
So that talk was really interesting today. Thank you for that. And on behalf of Queen Elizabeth School, I'd like to thank you for sharing an insight and giving us the information that we will definitely be using in the future to build our careers and our lives in general. But on the other hand, I'd like to also say thank you to all the students that did come today. If you guys want to know, we actually had quite a tiring day today. We came from a 4-hour walk in the Chiltern Hills. So for each and every one of them to actually show up after this quite tiring walk is just a testament to everyone's drive for knowledge and learning. So thank you for having Queen Elizabeth School at Tech Tuesdays. Thank you for sharing your insights today. And thank you to everyone from QE for actually showing up. So yeah.
Good. Well, the reality of life is Shubh actually stole the thunder from me, so I have nothing much to add. But having said that, obviously, given the day, it's pouring like hell outside. It's good to have 46 people inside the room and the 16 joining remotely from various parts of the world at odd hours. So thanks to each one of you who have taken the time, the interest, and the patience to be here and share your knowledge, absorb something, and share something in return. And thanks a lot to all the panel members out here for making it and patiently addressing all the questions, hearing us, and everything else. So a big thanks to each one of you for being here. Thank you so much. I don't want to take much time between the drinks and the crisp and everything else out here, but a couple of very quick things. As I mentioned earlier, we're going to sort of invite a couple of you guys outside for your video bites and show obviously we can coordinate the whole piece. That's number one. Number two is the next session or next episode of Tech Tuesdays UK is happening on the 1st of August. Topic for discussion is women in tech. So please, please, please share this among your women colleagues and invite them to be here. On the 5th of September, the topic for discussion is sports, media and technology. So if you love sports, please come in. If you love media, come in. If you love technology, please come in. If you have any reasons to be here. And yes, last but not the least, please spread the good word about Tech Tuesdays through all our social channels. Thank you so much for being here. Enjoy the evening. And yes?
Can I just add one thing?
Yes, please.
Sorry. Just quickly, for everyone from QE, please do come. We'll have a group picture.
All the students actually, yeah.
All the students here will have a group picture with the panelists at the front here with the background. And yeah, do join us for that.
Wonderful. Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you so much.